Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to Speaker Night, and thank you for your patience. Our speaker is just being interviewed by WBFO, so I appreciate your patience. On behalf of our staff and our board of directors, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Theodore Roosevelt Site's Speaker Night. This is our fourth Tuesday of the month presentation, which gives us an opportunity to think about some of the issues and things that were going on in TR's time and continue to be important today. Our topic today, I think, is very timely. TR was, of course, knew how to use the media, bully pulpit, and I'm interested to see what Dr. Wendland has to say about what's going on today. But we're very lucky to welcome Dr. Jay Wendland from Damon College. He's one of my colleagues there, who is going to be talking to us about presidents in the media, who shapes whom. I should also mention and thank our sponsors, M&T Bank, as well as New York State Council on the Arts. They make this program possible, and we also, thanks to NYSCA, do record all of our Speaker Night presentations. So if you want to see this one again or missed an earlier one, please go to our YouTube channel and check those out. Jay Wendland received his PhD in political science in 2013 from the University of Arizona and is currently an assistant professor in the Department of History and Political Science at Damon College. His research focuses on American politics, campaigns and elections, politics in the media, and American political behavior. This is evidenced by his publication history, which includes the 2017 book, Campaigns That Matter, The Importance of Campaign Visits in Presidential Nominating Contests. Also a forthcoming journal article examining the 2016 presidential nominating contests in the Journal of Political Marketing, co-authored articles in Electoral Studies and the Forum, as well as a co-authored book chapter in reapportionment and redistricting in the West. I'm delighted to welcome Jay here and can't wait to hear what he has to say about presidents and media. Please join me in welcoming Jay.
All right, so thanks to Lenora for that very nice introduction. Thank you all for coming out, and a special thank you to the TR site and its wonderful sponsors of Speaker Night for having me. Anytime I get to talk about my research or something I'm interested in politically, obviously I'm going to jump at the chance, and Lenora presented me with a very timely topic tonight. So I'm going to try and answer the question, who shapes whom here? Because the president and the media have a bit of a sordid history. And ultimately, the point I kind of want everybody to come away with is there's not just one right answer here. Sometimes presidents are very effective at shaping the media narrative about themselves. Other times, not so much. And so I'm going to start with the elephant in the room right away, and talk about Donald Trump and his use of Twitter. And then back up a little bit, start with looking at TR and his relationship with the media, using one of my favorite stories of him working with Upton Sinclair, trying to take down the meatpacking trust here in the United States. And so, even if you're not on Twitter, if you flipped on the news, likely you've seen some coverage of Donald Trump's tweets. He kind of embraces this very adversarial role with the media, challenging them, calling them, fake news, repeatedly, at all times throughout the day, as evidenced by the timestamps on these tweets, some coming at 4 o'clock in the morning, others, later on in the afternoon, or even a little bit later in the morning. So Donald Trump and his use of Twitter kind of highlights what we as political scientists like to call going public. Trying to get around Congress or trying to get around something that's blocking you as a president from achieving what it is you want to achieve. And so Donald Trump kind of used the media as standing in his way of success. Trump wants to build a border wall, and the media, combats that with, well, here's how much it's actually going to cost, and here's why it's really quite illogical. And so Trump has taken to Twitter because this is the one area where he's not constrained by journalistic slant by anybody. He gets his message straight out to whoever reads it. And it's not really that hard to decode what Trump is saying here. Any negative polls are fake news. Pretty straightforward stuff. No room for ambiguity there. The fake news media is not my enemy, it's the enemy of the American people. I would argue not so much, as the media has it should be embraced as this kind of fourth branch of government. They are our liaison between what's going on in government and what we know. And so to me, the media is something we should embrace because they inform us of what our elected leaders are up to. And so Trump tries to go public, and this is something we'll come back to kind of later on. But this kind of sets up nicely the discussion of TR and the media, because TR really starts, at least I like to think that TR starts this idea of political spin and trying to use the media in a way to shape his narrative. And so Trump attempts to shape the narrative through Twitter. This is his chosen kind of media outlet that he wants to use. Obviously, Teddy Roosevelt didn't have Twitter at his disposal. He had one media outlet, the newspapers. So TR had to work with the newspapers and was actually quite good at it. TR knew how to use the press to get what he wanted. And this is because TR also realized the importance of public opinion, another of my research interests. If the public opinion is on the side of the president is able to be much more successful in passing policies they want. And if we look at public opinion polls right now, Trump's support is around 37%. If your support is around 37%, there's not a good chance of you getting anything done that you're going to be overly happy with. And that the public is going to praise you for getting done. But TR was much better able, as I'll talk about shortly here, to use the media to craft the narrative he wanted to be successful in taking down the meatpacking press. And so, ultimately, I argue that presidents who understand how the media outlets operate and their importance to a democratic society are much better able to shape their coverage and be successful at navigating policy making. While those that don't have this appreciation for the media are doomed to negative coverage and likely an unsuccessful policy legacy. So Teddy Roosevelt actually embraces this idea that the president should have a hand in policy making. Until TR, most presidents had respected what they believed the founders' intentions were in the Constitution to make the Congress the chief policy-making body, and that the president was there as kind of an administrative head and an executive to make sure those laws got carried out the way they were supposed to be. Roosevelt kind of turned this on its head and said, no, Washington needs to be the center of policy making. The president needs to take the lead here. It's not just Congress. The president should help dictate what Congress is working on. And so one of the journalists mentioned that it's true that TR liked to take the center of the stage. He liked the attention he got from the press, he liked the attention from the public. But when he sought the stage, it always seemed as though that was the appropriate place for him. He always had something worthwhile to say, or at least that's the way it came off, even if not everybody always agreed. But he really pioneers this what I call the art of spin in our democratic system for the presidency, because no president just puts out their message and hopes that it lands the way they want to. They're not spinning themselves; they're paying their press officers to do that. Trump's recent hire of Scaramucci, I believe that is his name, the Mooch, exemplifies this quite well. If you watched any of the Mooch's press interactions, it's very clear that it is his job to advance Trump's agenda, whatever it is Trump tells him to do that day. And Roosevelt really begins or pioneers the art of political spin here for us, at least when it comes to the media. And of course, it's impossible to talk about TR and the media without mentioning the muckrakers. So the muckrakers were those that, reported on the evils of society and wanted to highlight and, get them to change the way they behave. So TR, as long as they were being, as he calls it, absolutely truthful, embraces the role the muckrakers have in democracy, or at least in our democratic system. I hail as a benefactor every writer or speaker, every man who, on the platform or in a book, magazine, newspaper, makes such an attack, provided always that he, in his turn, remembers that the attack is of any use only if it's absolutely truthful. So as long as reporters are being honest about the evil of society, this is something that should be embraced. We shouldn't always want to cover up the negativity, but shine a light on it so we can affect change. I would argue this is not what we see in our current administration. We're not necessarily trying to shine a light on all of the evils. Though many journalists do try very hard to do so. So TR partners with Upton Sinclair, who wasn't one of the well-known muckraker journalists, but spent a lot of time researching the meatpacking plants in Chicago, ultimately culminating in his famous book in the early 1900s, The Jungle, which details the horrors of the meatpacking industries where animals were not treated in the most, the meatpacking plants were not the cleanest of all places. He describes a number of the nasty details, which I won't get into too far. But it's really an unlikely pairing because Upton Sinclair embraces the kind of socialist ideology. TR is a Republican, and so a Republican and a socialist teaming up to fight the evils of meatpacking doesn't necessarily, seem to flow. But in this case, it does. TR publicly referred to Sinclair as a crackpot, but in private wrote him, a 3-page letter correcting some of what he saw was wrong about the jungle, but ultimately agreeing that the evils behind the meatpacking trust needed to change, that there needed to be government regulations. So him and Sinclair agreed on this point. And so he reaches out to Sinclair in hopes of working with him to effect change. And so after meeting with Sinclair, Roosevelt decides that he's going to employ the Agriculture Secretary to go to Chicago and inspect the meat plants. Sinclair says, no, this is a terrible idea. If you send a government official, they're going to clean everything up and make it look all shiny and clean, and you're not going to see the real evils behind the scenes. And so, based on Sinclair's suggestion, Roosevelt agrees and concedes to send somebody basically undercover to Chicago to investigate. Still government officials, but not somebody as overtly well known as the Agriculture Secretary was. Though I will be honest, I don't know if I could pick our Agriculture Secretary currently out of the crowd, but if we pick even the Undersecretary, that has a better chance of being hidden, if you will. So, the meatpacking industry, in response to the publishing of The Jungle, took on a publicity campaign of their own. So they said, obviously, this is not good for business, and so Jay Armour of the Armour beef industry writes several articles under an assumed name to several big-time newspapers trying to advance the cause of the meatpacking industry and kind of refuting Sinclair's findings. And so at this time, Sinclair obviously feels very passionate about this cause. He knows that TR is trying to investigate this, but he's also, getting anxious. He wants change. And finally, TR gets the report, but he's sitting on the findings, which upsets Upton Sinclair. I just finished reading It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis, and I always confuse the names. But Sinclair, obviously very angry that TR is sitting on this official government report, and TR is simply leaking bits and pieces to the media, basically trying to whet the appetite, trying to carve out public opinion to be on his side before he releases the full report. Because his fear was, I release the full report and it blows over and people forget. Or, a new crisis arises and then you don't see Congress focus on it. And he can't work just with Congress because Congress is made up of a lot of business industry leaders. And so Congress doesn't want to pass these regulations. So TR works with the media and leaking bits and pieces. Sinclair, in the meantime, grows too impatient, meets with the New York Times, and releases all of his notes from his novel. And also, blows the secret that TR had this all investigated. Because TR had met with Sinclair and said, here's what we found. Everything has been corroborated from the book, except they couldn't corroborate Sinclair's findings that people would fall in the vats and nobody would do anything. So this was the only finding that TR wasn't able to corroborate. So TR was very unhappy at this, but then does release the full report. And the media responds with support for government regulations. The New York Evening Post ran a story where they changed the lyrics to Mary Had a Little Lamb to when she saw it sicken, she shipped it off to packing town, and now it's labeled chicken. Highlighting again some of the nasty habits of meatpacking plants and bolstering TR's call for government regulations. So despite TR and Sinclair being on opposite ends of the ideological spectrum, they were able to work together to actually get change to happen in DC. So over the span of about 6 months, we saw Congress finally pass legislation that regulates the meatpacking industry. It's not quite as strict as Roosevelt wanted, but he still praised Congress for being the most productive he has ever seen them. So because he understood the vital importance of the media and its relationship with public opinion, he was able to use the media to shape the opinion to get it on his side, he was able to get the American public on his side in terms of convincing them that the meatpacking industry needs to change and be regulated, which wouldn't have happened if he had to simply work with Congress. So this would be a successful example of going public, crafting public opinion through the media to actually make change. And the journalist Lincoln Steffens at the time called this the real power behind Theodore Roosevelt. This was where he was able to kind of wield the bully pulpit to ensure the public was on his side. And so Congress then was afraid to veer too far off from public opinion because they knew it was on Roosevelt's side, which, like I say, is really the beginning of spin then in Washington. Roosevelt successfully manages public opinion to get the legislative wins he wants. So to get us a bit up to current times, I decide to kind of briefly talk about the history of press conferences. Press conferences are one of the ways presidents are able to navigate the media and try and craft the narrative the media is putting out there. And so to kind of get us from TR to more of a modern discussion, we'll kind of trace the history here of presidential press conferences. Taft generally disliked the media and avoided them as much as possible. So Taft, who follows Roosevelt, who was very open with the media and kind of embraced this media and presidency relationship, went out the window with TR's successor, William Howard Taft. So he didn't care about how the press and public opinion worked. He didn't necessarily care about public opinion in general. And so Taft more or less avoided the media. Woodrow Wilson expanded the role of press conferences. Roosevelt brought back press conferences to begin with and was willing to speak with the press. He actually spoke with them about twice a week and allowed them to ask whatever questions they wanted. There was no vetting of the questions beforehand, no kind of weeding out of reporters. He embraced the media, at least until we entered World War I. Then everything got shut down, as he called for a national security reasons. So he held a total of 3 press conferences throughout his second term, and that was it. Before that, like I said, he openly embraced the press, not to shape public opinion like TR, but because he believed this was the duty of the Democratic leader. But again, he ended those sorts of relations after the Lusitania was sunk and we entered World War I. Warren G. Harding started out having a good relationship with the press. As a former newspaper publisher himself, he had a good relationship with a lot of reporters. He played cards with several reporters and went golfing with reporters and publishers until that whole Teapot Dome investigation started. Which after Teapot Dome, Harding created the question box. So any question the press wanted answered in a press conference had to be submitted beforehand, and him and his office got to vet those questions because he did not trust the media anymore. And he told them if he were to teach journalism, he would instruct all journalists to focus on accuracy and forget about being eager reporters. All that matters is being accurate. His successor, Calvin Coolidge, lived up to his silent reputation. Coolidge, known as Silent Cal, held press conferences but wouldn't actually say anything to the reporters. So he held the conferences but wouldn't really release any information. And as a reporter for a St. Louis newspaper said, we never covered Washington. They covered the Senate, because they got nothing from covering the White House. The White House wouldn't answer questions or they wouldn't be overly transparent. So they went where the news flowed, which was the Senate in the 20s. Hoover, unlike Coolidge, embraced the press and was actually the president that held the most frequent press conferences of any president. Again, until tragedy strikes in 29 and the stock market crashes and we enter the Great Depression. But prior to this, he actually spoke with the press and asked them how he could improve press conferences and make it easier and more informative for the press officers. He allowed extemporaneous questions from the floor. He didn't follow Harding's question box. Well, he used the question box, but he also allowed them to ask follow-ups, or if a topic was not brought up via the question box, he would still take those from the floor. But after the Depression hits, again, press relations changed. He believed stories, the news reports they would actually type up, should be submitted before they were published for presidential approval, and also screened out journalists he did not like. So he ended Wilson's belief that all journalists should be welcome to attend presidential press conferences by screening out the journalists he didn't like. And obviously, stories being submitted before being printed is a bit of the violation of a free press, enforced by our Bill of Rights. But nonetheless, Herbert Hoover started with an open, honest relationship, and that changed once the stock market crashed. FDR had a very similar kind of storyline. Everything was going very well until the New Deal stalled. So FDR embraced TR's legacy, really. He didn't require questions written ahead of time. He embraced the adversarial exchanges with press officers, was happy to go back and forth and defend his positions. He also believed that a free press is the cornerstone to a successful democracy. And for that, the press liked him a great deal. He didn't make it difficult to get information. He embraced the press embraced him, again, until the New Deal stalled. After the New Deal stalled, he still held press conferences, but he would also instruct reporters how they should write their news reports, which journalists obviously did not appreciate that much. So he would give them the information and tell them then how to write it and how to frame it. And they called it, the FDR School of Journalism. And then we get Truman, who pretty much changes the way press conferences are held and more or less sets up how they're held and run today. He took the press briefings out of the Oval Office, so prior to Truman, they were actually held in the Oval Office. The press was invited in. Everybody sat around the Resolute desk and they had a conversation about what was going on. Obviously, this is not the press conferences we see today. Truman is the one that changed things up. He had all of the press officers seated in the White House, I forget the name of the room they had, but they were still in the White House at the time, just not in the Oval Office. And so he would have them sitting, they rose while the president entered, and then they sat back down and the president stood at the podium and addressed any questions the press had for him. So obviously this is a big change. This is the president asserting his authority here. He's the news source, and reporters were below the president. The president spoke to the journalists. They weren't having a conversation. Truman was in charge. And ultimately the press and Truman got along, but Truman also embraced the adversarial relationship as well, feeling free to tell the press it's none of your business, when he didn't want to disclose a topic they wanted to discuss. And when he was questioned about who he chose to give interviews with, he told them, "I'll give interviews to anyone I can, please." He was criticized for giving an interview to somebody that had already won 2 Pulitzers. This interview garnered him his 3rd. And so they wanted Truman to kind of spread the wealth around, to which he responded and said, "I'll do what I want because I'm the president." And so Truman sets up the layout of our current press conference, where the president stands and the press sits. Eisenhower further creates rules that are mostly still in place today. He eliminates the no direct quote rule, so journalists are finally allowed to directly quote the president. Prior to this, a lot of journalists would quote the press secretary or another press officer instead of the president. That way, if a mistake was made, the president wasn't blamed. It was one of his staff members that took the fall for incorrect information. He also allowed for the public to hear the recordings of press conferences, and also allowed cameras to film the press conferences. And so snippets could be used to kind of showcase to the American people what the president was talking about. JFK is the one that went live with press conferences, something his staff hated, because they knew the president would eventually make a mistake. Wrong information would be put out there. There would be no real way to cover it up because it was live. Everybody that was tuned in saw it. And so if the president screws up, everybody would know. And they were much more tuned into in Kennedy's time because there were only a few channels. And when there are only a few channels, you can't turn on whatever baseball game you want to watch. Instead of listening to the president, you had to listen to the president. There was no escaping the press conference when it was live. So Kennedy relished this. He loved having his press conferences live. His staff not so much, because then they had to work to create press releases if he screwed something up. But Kennedy enjoyed his relationship with the press. LBJ tried to avoid live press conferences. He was not as well spoken as Kennedy. He had a much more sordid relationship with the press, though he did try to move the press by inviting them to lunch, to have sherry in the residence. He invited them for swims in the White House pool. And he offered to dance with their wives at formal dinners. And so LBJ tried very hard to get the press on his side. Unfortunately for him, it didn't work. And so he and the press had a bit of a falling out, where he more or less told them, I'm done holding press conferences. He wasn't trusting of the media, and so even after his attempts to get them on his side, he was not at all successful. Which gets us Nixon. And this is one of my favorite photos of Nixon at a press conference, because I think it really highlights Nixon's relationship with the press very well. Nixon and the press obviously didn't get along at all. And Watergate is really this kind of big turning point in media relationships with the president. Watergate is where we see journalists adopt this adversarial style, constantly looking for the next big scoop. Because Woodward and Bernstein obviously are the two reporters that cracked the story of Watergate, with the help of Mark Felt and FBI. But nonetheless, it was journalists that broke the story of Watergate. And so even before this, Nixon distrusted and hated the press. In his first press conference, Nixon informed the press that he wasn't going to tell them what he was going to do in terms of domestic or foreign policy. Which actually, as I was putting this together, I realized it's very similar to the way Trump has treated foreign policy when speaking to the press, because he says, you don't tell the enemy what you're about to do, so I'm not going to tell the press what I'm thinking in terms of foreign policy. I'm just going to do it. Nixon had the same sort of, ideas, except he did that with domestic policy as well. So he just wasn't going to tell the press anything. Dan Mather, who actually was covering the White House at the time, started the question by saying, I want to state this question with due respect for your office, to which Nixon interjects, that would be unusual. Just again highlighting Nixon's very testy relationship with the press. Obviously, the press gains a lot of credibility with the Watergate investigation and is still always looking for that next big scoop. Which doesn't bode well for poor Gerald Ford at the beginning of his presidency, because they went after Ford just the way they went after Nixon. So at any press conference, journalists were basically trying to see who could ask the, the snipiest question, if you will. So who could ask the biggest question and make Ford screw up? Or who could knock Ford off his game and make him uncomfortable the rest of the time. However, journalists eventually came to know Ford and acknowledged that he was a nice guy, and press conferences got a little bit better for him. Carter was viewed as very informed and intelligent, but the press viewed him as very boring and depressing even. So Carter's relationship with the press, not as good as it might have been. Though it is, nice to know that they did view him as informed and smart. Just a little bit dull. And when we get to our more modern presidents and press relations, things really take a turn. We still see press conferences held, obviously, at a much lower rate than they were previously. We see, fewer actual presidential press conferences today than we did in the past. And it's mostly because everybody's worried about the president making a gaffe. Everybody's worried about the president saying something incorrectly, and we have to then deal with the aftermath. So Ford, Carter, and Reagan all started and used dress rehearsals before a press conference, something used by George H.W. Bush, Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, all would press rehearse before a press conference. The White House staff would work at choreographing press conferences as much as they possibly could. They are very, familiar with the press, and so they would be able to come up with questions that would likely come up at a press conference. And so most presidents would have a good idea of the kind of questions they would be walking into. Reagan, obviously known as the great communicator, had great public relations skills from his time as a Hollywood actor. Still made gaffes in press conferences. In a famous example, when he was doing a conference on the Iran-Contra affair, the press office actually was releasing press releases before the press conference was over, because Reagan misspoke many, many times, going as far to say Israel had absolutely no involvement in Iran-Contra. And so the press office immediately issues press releases as Reagan was giving his press conference. And so we also see the press office planting questions in the audience if a president is nervous. or they're trying to get him some, softballs tossed their way. And it's sometimes hard to tell which questions are planted, which are not, but sometimes we get a gaffe, like President H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush had a hot mic moment where he complained that the questions weren't in the right order. And so he knew who he was calling on and what questions he was going to be asked, but they were asked in the wrong order, so he had to think a little bit on his feet. But he still complained that they weren't in the right order. And the way that the press office will plant questions is by offering reporters an interview with the First Lady or an interview with the President himself, something extra that the journalist typically wouldn't get. So they're able to plant questions to make the President feel a little bit better when need be. So just to give you a sense of the changing number of press conferences we've seen, this goes back to Calvin Coolidge all the way through George W. Bush. And so lots of presidential press conferences until really, the 1950s when Eisenhower starts to drop off. George H.W. Bush, we see a little spike there. After the Kennedy administration, we see our more modern presidents maybe willing to fold a bit more because not as many people are actually tuning in to presidential press conferences as they once were. We're now able, to click on one of the thousands of channels we now get at home, or if we're streaming Netflix, we have absolutely no idea what's going on in terms of the news. So we have a lot of other options than to watch press conferences when they're happening. And our more modern presidents have also embraced some alternatives to the press conference. So if you're uncomfortable in the press conference sort of situation, we now have what are called pool sprays, where they will invite some reporters to a special event or to the Oval Office, and they'll answer the questions those reporters have, but on a much smaller scale. And the topics are usually pre-discussed, so the president at least knows kind of what he's walking into. They will sometimes create newsworthy events using diversionary issues, like when we see them bring in some award recipient, like a Purple Heart recipient, and create some sort of newsworthy event where then we can direct questions about that event instead of maybe answering other questions the public wants to know about. They will enlist celebrity support for unpopular programs. So I know President Obama enlisted celebrity support when he was touting Obamacare back in the early 2010s. And we'll talk a little bit more about celebrity support for some of these issues later on. But they'll also sometimes appear on popular news programs, both hard news or soft news programs. The presidential candidates, for example, appearing on Oprah or Ellen when running for office. Obama made a couple of trips to the late night talk shows, Jay Leno, Dave Letterman, and I believe Jimmy Fallon was in there as well. Obama also appeared on the Colbert Report before that ended on Comedy Central, actually taking over the hosting duties for a bit on that show. And so presidents are able to kind of direct public opinion in a way by appearing on these news programs to highlight an issue they care about or try and preemptively answer questions that they might not want to actually hold a press conference about. Obama also famously appeared on Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis an attempt to reach out to younger voters, which, if you haven't watched it, is an internet show hosted by Zach Galifianakis. But again, trying to tout healthcare and get younger people to sign up for Obamacare. Young people aren't signing up for it, the whole system kind of falls apart. And sometimes presidents will allow others to deliver the news for them. For example, if there's a defense story, sometimes we'll see a press conference held at the Pentagon by the Secretary of Defense, or somebody else will deliver the news on behalf of the president. We also see a lot of paid pundits on cable news programs and syndicated columnists that also spread the news for presidents. Now, our latest alternative to press conferences would be social media. Presidents don't necessarily have to hold a press conference. Instead, they will hop on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, what have you, to get their message out to voters. Clearly, Twitter is one of our current president's chosen media outlets. Trump also appears quite regularly on Fox News, especially Fox and Friends in the morning. He's an avid caller-inner, if you will, and will tout Fox News on Twitter and encourage people to watch and pay attention. But social media allows the president to take their message directly to the public. So they don't have to worry about journalists misinterpreting what it is they're saying. They just put it out there and we can see their thoughts and their opinions right away. And it also allows for the public to respond. So social media can be great. Obama actually used social media very well on the campaign trail. He was able to, kind of get people organized in a way that helped him with grassroots efforts in states, battleground states in the election. And so social media can be a great tool for presidents. And Trump initially was successful through social media. Throughout the campaign season, a lot of people knew what Donald Trump, and a lot of people still know what Donald Trump puts out there on Twitter. And when running for office, name recognition and getting people to think about you is an important aspect to campaigning. We don't necessarily have to like the message or the messenger, but as long as you're thinking about that candidate, that's a win for them. And so Trump was very successful using Twitter throughout the campaign season. But now Trump's use of Twitter seems to be failing him. People, journalists specifically, have caught on to the way he uses social media and are reporting on his tweets and also providing some context for those tweets now. They're going where the story is. So if the story is on Twitter, journalists will go there, they will get the tweet, and they will report on it. Just this morning, as I was watching the news, I learned through the news program I was watching that Trump put out another tweet, again, kind of disparaging his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, and again, encouraging him to look into any sort of misconduct by Hillary Clinton. And the way the press kind of jumped on this was Trump is now basically just playing with Sessions. He wants Sessions to resign, but he doesn't want to fire him. And so the way the press interpreted these last series of tweets was this is Trump's way of trying to push Sessions out. Now, whether or not this is correct or not, only time will tell. It seems to be a pretty legitimate idea. But nonetheless, Trump's idea where he's able to bypass the media by using social media outlets doesn't seem to be working anymore. because the media is picking them up and running with them, and very happily spreading what Trump is trying to accomplish, or encouraging us to do, and providing that kind of narrative and context behind the tweets. So again, I argue that for presidents to have a successful relationship with the press, they need to understand the important role the press plays in our democratic society. And if presidents can at least acknowledge that important role, they will be successful in using the media to advance their agenda. The media will at least have respect for that president. Presidents that don't have that understanding have had a much rockier relationship with the press. And presidents, that have used the media to shape public opinion have had successful in passing the agenda, the policy agenda they wanted. And presidents that have not, or presidents that have had their agenda shaped by the media have not understood this vital relationship. Again, if we look at Trump, not really understanding how the media works within our democratic society, wasn't expecting the backlash, I think, that he's experiencing, which is why he's resorted to calling them fake news. And so I just pulled a couple of quotes to conclude with from our most recent president, George W. Bush. Recently said, "I consider the media to be indispensable to democracy. We need media to hold people like me to account." So Bush obviously left office with historically low approval ratings, and the media was not kind to George W. Bush. That's probably putting it about as PC as I possibly can. But Bush still appreciates and recognizes the important role the media plays in our democratic system. Barack Obama stated that I spend a lot of time in my farewell address talking about the state of our democracy. And it goes without saying that essential to this is a free press. I think this also highlights a little bit of nerves he had upon leaving about the state of the press and media relations, what was going to happen in the future. And then finally, our current president by saying the fake news media, the failing New York Times, CNN, NBC News, and many more, is not my enemy, it's the enemy of the American people. Sick. So, based on everything we've seen in our history, Trump is more or less doomed to a rocky relationship with the press. And if history is really going to tell us anything, it's that Trump is going to have a very tough time advancing any sort of policy agenda he might have. And if we look at the current debate on healthcare going on right now, history seems to be playing out exactly how we would expect. About 17% of Americans approve of the current health care bill that is being debated by the Senate right now. What this ultimately is going to come out looking like, nobody really has any ideas right now. But Trump is going to have a very difficult time advancing any sort of policy agenda because of this rocky relationship with the press. Now, this isn't the only reason, but it is a reason he's going to have quite a bit of difficulty going forward with any policies he wants